Good morning, everyone. You're listening to the award-winning program, Exceptional Women. This is Magic Sue Tab, and I'm here in studio with a doctor from Brigham and Women's Hospital and Brigham and Women's Faulkner Hospital. She is Dr. Erika Rangel, who will share with us today her journey in the field of medicine, including the challenges of raising a family while pursuing a career as a general surgeon and trauma doctor. We'll also find out what almost caused her to abandon her dreams and about a mentorship program she is formalizing to help other young female doctors. Welcome, Dr. Rangel.
Thank you.
So glad we're able to capture some time with you. You're a surgeon, but you're also a mom and a wife and a teacher and a researcher. So I want to just give listeners, what does a day look like for you? Because I look at your resume and I go, wow, how do you do all of that in 24 hours?
So it's really not that glamorous. I'm sure it's like a lot of other women. I get up really early at, 5:45 or 6, and I'm up making lunches and getting the kids dressed for school and out the door. On some days where I'm lucky, I get to walk them to school, and if my schedule allows it, I do that. And otherwise, I'm out the door about 6:45 to start either my OR cases at 7:30 or around in the ICU about the same time.
And what time do you get home at night?
That's sort of variable, anywhere between 5:30 and 7, I would say.
Yeah.
I try to make it a priority to be home to have dinner with the kids and bathe them and read, and that's a priority. So that goes above a lot of other demands in my schedule.
So when you're a doctor, I always say a doctor is a way of life. It's not just a job. So tell us, have you always wanted to be a doctor? Is it something that you knew from the time you were a little girl? Is it something that came a little later? Tell us a little bit about how you came into this field.
So I actually grew up wanting to be a vet. So I chose school wanting to go to veterinary school. So while I was in college, I shadowed this orthopedic surgeon at a local hospital, at a Kaiser, and I was sort of bit by the bug. It was just fascinating work, and I got to see him in the operating room and sort of instantly fell in love, so changed my mind and pursued medical school instead.
Wow. You've had a lot of years of schooling. I know you went to UC Berkeley. You were a resident at Stanford University Medical Center. You've done some instruction work at Harvard Medical School. So it feels like to me education has been very important in your life. Is that something that was instilled with you in you when you were younger, your family? How did that come to be?
So I am a first generation Chinese American. So I am the daughter of immigrant parents.
Okay.
And they came here with pretty much nothing other than the clothes on their back and education and a really great work ethic. So some people have the stereotype of, the tiger mom, and they push you really hard to study all the time. And I definitely would say my parents didn't fall in that category, but they were really big on maximizing opportunity. My mom was really big on pushing confidence. And so we sort of grew up with this feeling of there's nothing that you can't do if you set your mind to it. So, if you shoot for the stars, you'll always end up happy with where you land. But even more than that, I think they really push this idea of family above education. So that's really something that's stuck with me my whole life. And
I want to talk about that later because you've done a lot of work with the whole work-life balance. Mm-hmm. So I want to get to that. Before I do, I just want to ask you, I know you're a surgeon and you do a lot of trauma. So the type of work that you do as a doctor, you intervene in people's lives at very critical times. And I'm thinking that that's a pretty stressful feeling. And I look at that and I think, how do you sort of not bring that home with you? And how did you pick that? And how do you manage that? Because, it's a high stress environment, I would think.
So that's funny. When I went to medical school, I wanted to work with women. So I thought I wanted to be an OBGYN, and I spent the first 2 years completely convinced of that. And surgery was the one thing I absolutely didn't want to do.
Really?
So when it came time to work out in the wards, I thought, I'll just do it first. I'll get it out of the way. I'll get my feet a little bit wet. And, I was completely captured by it, completely unexpectedly. And it was, I worked in this trauma center in San Francisco. And I think there were really 3 things about it that spoke to me. And one was, sort of the stereotype of the surgeon just having this great skill and confidence in a very critical moment, and they can make decisions with speed and accuracy. And that was really exciting. More than that, I think the second part of it was the interaction with the families, and that was the piece I didn't expect. And I think the unique part about surgery is that you come into someone's life at a really critical moment, and you become very important to this family, even though you haven't met them before. And you get that chance to take them from perhaps the worst moment of their life to the best moment of their life, if you can really affect a difference in the health of their son or their mom or their dad. And that is such an honor and a privilege, and I think it was really special. And then the third thing that I think a lot of people don't know is that surgery is it's a team, it's a family, and it's unique in healthcare or in terms of other specialties in that we all work together very much as a family. We help each other out when things are tough. We work as partners in the operating room. We round together. We eat together. So it's like a little fraternity, or in my case, it's a sorority. But, you do spend a lot of time with your colleagues. It's a lot of fun.
So I think back at, my days watching like Grey's Anatomy and things like that. Are there anything about those TV shows that really depict what it's really like, or is that all just Hollywood glitz and glamour? Because that's all I know, looking from the outside in, is what I see on TV. And it does seem like they're a family. I mean, they're pretty involved in each other's personal lives, and, there's a lot of drama going on behind the scenes. So how much of that is real and how much is Hollywood?
Well, I would say it's not real in the sense that we don't have a mass casualty every Thursday night, and we're not really solving cancer in a single evening.
Yeah.
And I'm not really sure we have a McDreamy around all the time. But
darn.
But it is real in the sense that, it's very emotional working with the families who have a sick person who's, maybe in the ICU, and that emotion runs really, really intensely. And I think that's one of the reasons why I love what I do, because you get to step into that person's life for that time period.
It's a very intimate kind of work.
It's very intimate. And in terms of taking it home, I wouldn't say that I take it home in a bad way. It makes you hold your family that much tighter and realize what's important and what isn't. And what else is accurate? I think TV also captures that we have really deep personal relationships with one another. I think some of the best friends that you make are the people that you work alongside, 80, 90 hours a week. And to some extent, the TV shows capture that, although they definitely expound on it maybe a little bit more than it really exists.
They take some creative license? Is that what you're saying?
They take some creative license, and they don't necessarily capture the fatigue and burnout that comes with working those long hours, because that probably doesn't make for the best TV.
For those of you just joining us, good morning and welcome to Exceptional Women on Magic 106.7. I'm Sue Tabb, and this morning we are talking with Dr. Erika Rangel, a surgeon and mother, who is talking about her career, the challenges of being a female in this industry, and her quest for a better work-life balance. Let's get back to our conversation. I want to focus a little bit on the work-life balance because you have 2 children. And you talk a lot about, and pretty openly, about the struggles you had early on when you were pregnant and when you first had children, and how you balanced a demanding job as a surgeon and then your job as wife and mom, and that wasn't always easy. Talk a little bit about the emotions that you went through during that time in the really early stages.
So I think in the beginning, before I had kids, the hours were long, but I was young and single, and everybody at the hospital, the co-residents are your best friends. They're sort of your surrogate family, and there's this camaraderie that comes with being in the trenches together and all the shared triumphs and failures and miseries. And I really cherish that relationship. One of my best friends in residency used to call me Paji, which is Hindi for brother. And that was sort of the ultimate compliment, because I saw surgery as the ultimate brotherhood. We kind of picked each other up when one of us was down and helped each other out. And then suddenly, I had I was pregnant, and my priorities suddenly shifted. That was a challenge in and of itself, because at the time, being pregnant during surgical residency was a bit of a novelty. Not that many people had done it.
Yeah.
And so maternity leave was sort of 4 weeks of vacation time, and then you got 2 weeks of medical leave if you had, an extenuating circumstance. So that made 6 weeks. And if you took more than that, you couldn't graduate.
Really?
So, right. So
Wow.
the board rules were that you had to complete a certain amount of training within a certain period of time. So I came back to work after 6 weeks after having a C-section. And I think that's something that every mom can reconcile. I think everybody can relate to that feeling of, you're not getting a lot of sleep. You have a newborn at home. You're up all night, and you're still learning the process of taking care of this new person. And you can barely take care of yourself. And all of a sudden you have to go take care of a whole bunch of sick people at the hospital. So it was a little bit overwhelming. And for me, actually, I talk about this really openly because it's one of the things I think needs to change in our field. Even things like breastfeeding was a huge challenge. It wasn't something we had worked on as a field or as a profession. And, I found myself getting up at 4 a.m. to pump because I had to be at rounds by 5:30, and I had to do it again before I went into the operating room. And a lot of these cases were 6 or 7 hours long with older men that I didn't feel comfortable asking them for a break.
Right.
And so my schedule would sort of revolve around when I thought I could make it to the nearest bathroom. And if I, got mastitis or got an infection or something, I'd put myself on some antibiotics because I thought, I really just don't have time for this. I think that's one of the things that I feel like needs to be improved. And as the process went on, I would find myself skipping meals and skipping bathroom breaks, all with the hope that I might make it home in time to see the baby before he went to bed. And, then I'd fall apart if I didn't make it because I hadn't seen him in the morning either.
And so then you'd have the guilt, or you'd feel like you're missing milestone moments.
Yeah.
And so I would imagine that a lot of people during that time, a lot of women then put off having children because they don't feel like the two lifestyles can coexist, right? That of a surgeon and that of a mom, because they just can't make it all work.
Absolutely.
And in fact, I read a narrative that you wrote, and it's something in it struck me, and I want to read it aloud so people can listen. In an instant, family and career collided in a fashion well understood by millions of working women around the world. I was plagued by the constant problem of not having enough of myself to spread around. If I worked hard enough to be a good surgeon, I felt like an absentee mother. And you go on to say, the guilt nearly pushed me to abandon the field I had once loved so much. That must have been very difficult for you. The fact that you even contemplated, like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
Must have been a real wake-up moment for you that something has to change.
Yeah. I think for years I'd sort of prided myself on being, what we call a, quote, strong resident. And looking back, it's funny that a lot of the traits that we seem to admire in one another as surgeons are classically masculine, the ability to stand for hours on end in the operating room without needing to use the restroom, or to be up all night on call and not claim any fatigue, or to be able to tell a dirty joke without missing a beat. And suddenly I didn't know how I could, I sort of felt compelled to deny the new mother side of me in favor of proving my competence by still having those masculine traits. And that tug of war was really tough because I didn't have a lot of guidance. There wasn't a lot of other people who had done the same thing prior to me that I could turn to. And so because of that struggle and feeling that pull in both directions, I didn't feel like I was doing well in either direction. And I think one of the turning moments for me was having the struggle, sort of sacrificing not seeing my child and missing a lot of, pediatrician appointments and pickups and drop-offs at daycare. And through all of that, I overheard a male chief resident sort of snickering with another man, saying that he was going to put me in a really notoriously long case with an older male surgeon because he wanted to see if I would leak through my gown and how I was going to handle that. And that sort of broke me because I had been trying so hard. And it was sort of in that moment that I realized that despite all those efforts, I had lost that status of being one of the brothers or one of the boys. And I had to sort of reshape how I identified myself as a surgeon. And that's built a lot of how I feel about surgery today, that it needs to be more than just a brotherhood. It needs to be a sisterhood as well.
And how did you personally get your life back into balance? Like, what sort of resources did you tap into to get help so that you would be more available to your family?
I would have loved to say that there was a support system within the hospital, but actually for me, it was my husband, who is a pediatric surgeon.
Your husband is a surgeon as well?
Yeah, so my husband's a pediatric surgeon. He had finished training several years before me, and he was really the one. And I can't really call him a mentor because he hadn't been through this process. He was going through it with me, but he understood the challenges of being a resident, and he was always there, sometimes on a daily basis. And he'd meet me between cases, and he'd wipe away the tears, and he'd tell me, "You can do this. You're strong enough to finish." He would feed me if I hadn't eaten, and remind me to go to the bathroom. And there were just so many times that I always say he talked me off the ledge, because I was so close to quitting, and he would say, don't do it yet. Let's talk it out. And, he'd remind me how much I used to love surgery during those really difficult times. And I think he got me through the most difficult period.
You are an advocate, though, for having more formalized programs in place at work.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about that. I know that you think mentorship is really important. Tell us a little bit about that.
It sort of happened serendipitously, like a lot of things do. After I graduated, I'd find that a lot of the young women were coming to my office in confidence to speak about their concerns about work-life balance, or, maybe they were thinking about starting a family and didn't feel like they could make it work, and they didn't feel comfortable talking to anybody else about it. And as that happened a little bit more and more over my early years on faculty, I realized that we could make it a little bit more formal. And so we started having gatherings at my house, and it was everything from networking to sharing ideas about, childcare and local resources and support. And more than anything else, I think it really was that sisterhood I talked about, realizing that there were other people going through the same things that you were, that, even if you couldn't ask a male colleague to help you, you could ask a female colleague to help you. And so more recently, I've thought about making that a formal thing, because I think that there's something to be said about having somebody who has been through the experience to guide you with not only advice and showing the younger residents that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, but also to speak on the residents' behalf if they're uncomfortable speaking to one of their program directors or faculty about the issues they're having.
If you are just waking up and tuning in, thanks for listening to Exceptional Women on Magic 106.7. I'm Sue Tabb, and this morning we are talking with Dr. Erika Rangel, a surgeon at Brigham and Women's Faulkner Hospital. We've been talking about her passion for the field and her focus on humanizing the practice for the next generation of women surgeons. Let's continue. And I read that in your narrative. You talk about humanizing the practice. What do you mean when you say that?
I think we use a lot of our emotion with our families. We, sympathize with the pain that they might be going through, or the emotion they might be going through with a sick loved one, but we don't really have that same emotion for one another when we're struggling through hard times. So I think it's about bringing those very real life needs to the forefront of discussion and finding support for, childcare and personal needs and time off, and emphasizing how important those are within our surgical culture.
Do you feel that women who have children during either their residency or internships or whatever are looked at differently than their counterparts who don't have children?
Oh, boy. I do. I think that things are changing. 40% of the incoming general surgery residents now are women, and I think it's a generational thing. I think it will change more as time goes on. But right now, there are still stereotypes that exist. I think surgery has been a slower field to acclimate to those changes. It's becoming more and more common for people to have families during residency. And the truth is that it's not just women. Men have children during residency and may want time off to be with their families too. And I think universally that's starting to become more accepted for the next generation.
And do you feel like your journey has made you a better doctor? Having children and going through what you've gone through in the past several years, do you feel like you're more empathetic or you're a better colleague to maybe workers who are having some of the same issues you've had?
Absolutely. I think being through any tough experience yourself and then coming through on the other side makes you want to help other people who are struggling and show them that they can make it to the other side as well. I've been lucky to have a wonderful practice and be really, really happy with where I'm at, and have 2 beautiful children, and have really tried to fine-tune finding that work-life balance. So I want to help people who maybe can't see that happening yet for themselves, to show them that it is possible.
And I always think, too, a lot of women, try to do too much and don't ask for help enough. And it's, it's okay to ask for help or to hire out where you need to.
Yeah.
And it's almost like you have to give yourself permission to do that, because sometimes you feel like, I don't know, you're skipping out or you're looked down upon for doing that. And I've learned sometimes you just have to ask for help.
Oh, absolutely. One of the women that I worked with at Stanford was a surgeon herself. She was the wife of another surgeon, and she gave me that advice a very, very long time ago, before I was married, before I had children, was to hire what you can. If money doesn't buy happiness, but if you can afford, to have somebody help you with the laundry or with, running some errands so you can spend that time with your children, spend the money, because you'll never be able to recoup the time.
Right. And we're running out of time already, and there's so many other things I still want to ask you, but what are you most proud of in terms of looking back at your career? And you're still young, so you have a lot of career to go. But when you look back so far and what you've done, what are you most proud of? What do you see as milestones for you?
Really just growing this program and being an example for other young women, showing them that that work-life balance does exist as long as you prioritize it, and learning what you really want in your surgical career, and being happy and not feeling guilty for achieving just that, and being able to say no to anything more than that.
And what advice would you have for young girls looking to aspire to this type of work?
I think surgery is not really a job, it's a passion.
Mm-hmm.
And if you commit yourself to that and you find that it's your passion, you're never going to be sorry, because it's going to reward you with the humanism and the excitement, but just never lose sight of your family along the way, because they're the ones who are really going to get you through the tough times and be your anchor.
Any quotes that you live by? Any mantras or quotes?
Sheryl Sandberg gave the graduation speech at Harvard Business School in 2012. And she said something that really resonates with me, which is that she hopes for the next generation, and it hasn't existed for her and my generation, that she hopes for the next generation that half the men will be homemakers and half the women will be institutional leaders, because that's probably going to be a world which is better for all of us.
That's true. I want to thank you, Dr. Rangel, for sharing your perspective, your personal journey, and of course, your work toward developing programs that support young mothers in the medical field. We wish you the best of luck as you continue to change the landscape for the next generation of women surgeons. It has been my pleasure to have Dr. Erika Rangel in studio today. I am Sue Tabb, and I want to thank all of you at home for listening to Exceptional Women on Magic 106.7. We talk to all kinds of women, CEOs and authors and celebrities, but we also talk to teens and your next door neighbor and the person who is just quietly making things happen. Being exceptional is about having a story or a mission or even just a dream. So let us know if you know someone like that. Email us, go to magic1067.com, click on Exceptional Women, and then join me every Sunday morning at 7:30. Thanks for listening and have a great day.